I was shopping at Walmart last weekend with my mom. And as you know, Walmart is an interesting place to people watch. And at our last visit, I was not disappointed. We were in the grocery aisle and there were several shoppers with carts that kind of clogged the narrow aisleway. There was also a mom with 3 junior, senior high aged girls with her. And in the midst of this slow traffic moment where people weren't quite sure to go or not, I heard the mom speak over the crowd to her kids. We don't move until you hear an "excuse me, please." Okay. I was initially shocked to hear a mom teaching her kids rude behavior. As I was making way for others and ensuring that I was not in their way, here was another completely different way of living. Stand your ground and only move if asked politely. Now, I'm not here to paint a picture of heroes and villains in a melodrama of my own telling, for surely I will paint myself as the best possible light and others in more sinister colors. But I found myself thinking about this brief but telling episode of how one lives. And I couldn't help but be dismayed and think, well, how awful it is not only to have such a personal philosophy of me first and you all need to make room for me, but then to teach it to one's kids. And it's always nice to see someone else's less than shining moments and feel like, you know what, I got my life in pretty good order. If it were only that easy. While I have a keen sense of other people's failings, I have a much harder time sensing my own flaws. Even just calling them flaws seems like they're only minor offenses and easily corrected once I notice them. But come to find out, there is someone who is watching me too. My kids, and mimicking me. Even though they are now adults and have their own lives, I see what I have taught them being lived out, and it's easy to focus on the good, great kids, and ignore the rest. But it's not just my kids. It's also my confirmation students. And even more than that, but the congregation. And I do more than speak over a crowd at Walmart to a few children. I speak to hundreds of people every week. And the words of Jesus come to mind from Matthew chapter 5, verse 19, where he said in his Sermon on the Mount, "Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven." And from the next chapter in his same Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." Jesus has hard and blunt words to us as we judge one another, but his judgment is hardly the final word that he hopes we will hear and heed. Think about it. Jesus came into this world and we got to watch him. And his hope, even today, is that we will put into practice everything that we saw in him and heard from him. And that's the point of not judging others, is that we are not the standard. He is. And he is more than just the standard. He is the one who speaks over the crowd right now to inform us how his family will live. And his words are love, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. That's what we saw in Jesus, and that is the family philosophy of God. Self-sacrifice so that the sinner might receive grace is what we see and we hear from Jesus, even as it takes him to the cross. And Jesus teaches us how to think through situations where he hasn't spoken a specific word, but we know how his family thinks, responds, and reacts, in that they love. They will the good of the other. They submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. What I'm learning from Jesus is to turn from my judgment of others and to live out his way of love with a growing humility, that what I might find flawed in others doesn't exempt my own flaws, In His family, and as the dear children of God, there is a completely different philosophy, a way of living that the Holy Spirit is training us to live in so that we become like Jesus. So that in Walmart or wherever you find yourself, there is a kind and patient and grace-filled person that others are watching. Well, I hope then to see you all in Bible class and worship this weekend.